Hey, how you guys doing? Awesome. Everybody's grabbing drinks and food. Get nice and cozy. We're about to get everything started. Thanks for coming out. For Prince, somebody asked me last week at an event, hey, can you tell me about the event? I said, it's Prince. What else do you really need? Right? I am Patrick Frederiksen. I'm the Vice President for AIGA Los Angeles. For those of you who do know who we are or don't know who we are, AIGA Los Angeles is a catalyst for and champion of design in Southern California. We build programs and partnerships that increase wisdom, that create wonder, and that advance the well-being of the design community in Southern California. We are a community of designers and of people who love design. We've got people on the board who don't design anything, but they want to be a part of us, and we're an all-volunteer organization. And we are a chapter of AIGA, which is the largest professional design organization in the US. And we love putting on events like this. We love, as I said, celebrating Southern California and our community in Southern California. And having the opportunity to celebrate something that many creatives aren't aware of, which is Apogee Studio. So can everybody please give a big round of applause for Apogee Studios? We are so grateful for their kindness and for them allowing us to host this event in the space. It seems like the perfect spot to talk about music, to talk about design. Apogee Studios is 30 years old. It's run by Bob and Betty. It creates the premier digital audio devices in the world, right? And they are here to innovate, and they are here to continue to push what creativity can be and what innovation is within audio devices. And with that, we are so happy that Sebastian and Dre from Apogee are helping us pull all of this off tonight. So thank you to Sebastian and Dre. I also want to give a shout out to Media Temple. Media Temple is graciously helping us produce a live stream for this. So getting to the west side on LA on Thursday nights is never an easy thing to do. Whether it's traffic or whether it's, you just can't find a babysitter for your kids. There's all sorts of reasons that keep us here, so we're happy that we can share this with people around Los Angeles and really try to, and even around the country. I know that this is being picked up by some of our other chapters around the US. So we also have many chapter sponsors. We've got Incase, we've got BCGD, BCGDV, who I think is here in the audience tonight. We've got WeTransfer helping us out, Typecraft, a longtime sponsor, 4x6, Scout Books, Color Edge. We certainly can't pull any of this off without the help of these people, and so we definitely want to give them the love for everything they do. I'm going to get through all the rest of the boring stuff really quickly. There are a number of upcoming events that we have this weekend. We have a field trip at LACMA, a special curatorial tour of LACMA. We've got 15 tickets available. Go to our website if you want to find out more. It's to see Southern California graphic design show that's happening in LACMA. We also have at BCGDV in November, we have Right of Way, the Role of Poet. That is a long title. Talking about transportation and how transportation is being affected here in LA. That's happening on November 7th, the day after my birthday, so come celebrate. We do, as I said, have some great friends. UX Research Night is being hosted by our friends, Ladies at UX. Emergent Trends in Data Design is being hosted by Alexa Roman's group, which I'm sorry that I'm so sorry I'm forgetting the name right now. Look it up, it's going to be good. And Evenings at the Loft on November 15th is talking about health, and that's going to be over at Herman Miller, which is another great friend and great partner for us. And with all of that, these are all the things. Take pictures, write it down. If you want to share anything, if you need the password, this is how you get in. If you're looking for some place to work next Tuesday, just park out front. You get the password. That's how it all works. These are all the other things in case you want to give us any shout outs. AIGA Los Angeles should be pretty easy. And with all of that, here's the reason why we're here. Right? I'm going to hand this off, but I do want to say this project came together through a lot of sweat and through a lot of love. It was first pitched to Amanda and I back in January or February, and just the initial conversation about this person knows this person knows this person, and we can do this, and this is going to be a good thing. There's no way that we were going to say no. So it's been a lot of effort, it's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing the stories that come up tonight, and with that, I'm going to hand the mic off to our good friend, Grammy Award-winning designer, book author about one of the best airplanes ever. I mean, truly is, right? We're happy to have him as an advisory board member. He's one of the nicest Los Angeles designers you will meet, although Keith Neven's in the audience as well. So. it's kind of a little bit. But Mr. Lawrence Azerrad.
We should just start the slideshow, the movie. So, thank you, everyone, as Patrick said. Thank you to the AIGA, thank you to Apogee Studios, and it's just great that we have this design community here and a wonderful panel that we have here tonight. I would like to just get on with this. This is the reason why we're here this evening, and introduce to you Monica Payne, an artist manager, a friend and colleague of Prince, and one of the original founding members of the HONEY Collective. Yeah. I'd like to introduce Sam Jennings, who designed and ran all of Prince's online businesses from basically day one, and worked as Prince's art director throughout the mid-2000s. Sam. And of course, I'm thrilled to also introduce Mitch Monson, who designed extensively for Prince, among many notable touchpoints, stage sets, props, designs, including the iconic love symbol, Mitch Monson. So we're here tonight to talk about Prince and the creative legacy, but as designers in the room and designers across the country, we see we're in a time where, in the age of streaming, our relationship with music has changed completely. We experience music in a much more kind of topical fashion. We don't engage as deep as we used to when there was the engagement with the package or the artwork or the stage experience. And as designers, we have the power to deepen and broaden this engagement with music through our creativity. And I think no one exemplified this better than Prince, as far as the way he utilized color, photography, design, graphic design, stage design, every aspect of visual communication. He really created a comprehensive ecosystem for the fans and for the listeners to enjoy. And that's what we're here to celebrate, because he sets an example now more than ever. And we're thrilled to talk with you guys about it. So thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. So I'll just start for a question with all of you, looking at the comprehensive, holistic experience that Prince created, as far as the look and feel of everything, the fashion, the photography, the graphic design. Was this something that was intentional, or was it just part of his DNA? Was it just who he was, that he thought about every single aspect of design and that kind of representing what his music was about?
I would say, as far as it being intentional, it was a little bit of both, but it was definitely something that Prince just did very naturally. I mean, this was a person who just all the time was in that sort of creative space, in that creative mode. So naturally, everything, his clothing, the stage, the band, everything was just kind of an extension of that. So I think early on there might have been doing some things to get attention and whatnot, but overall, like, that's just who he was.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the intentional factor is like, looking back now, maybe it feels intentional. Like, how did that actually happen? Because it just seems like there's just this brilliance of branding that I can't think of anybody else that's branded himself as well as Prince. But I think in general, a lot of the stuff that we were working on just didn't have a lot of initial mission or a lot of like creator brief and a lot of depth of thinking. It was just like, you know, moving forward and moving quickly in a lot of our stuff. So for us, it just always seemed like we were just making things, but there had to be a bigger plan. There had to be, you know, more bigger picture thinking. I just think a lot of us were just busy making it, so it was hard to know what was going on inside his head. You know?
I mean, what was the idea realization process like with Prince? Did he sketch out ideas or kind of verbalize where he wanted things to go from the beginning, or was it more of a situation where he let you create in your own space?
I think a lot of times it was kind of a collaborative experience as far as visual design went. I think he was very different in his music, but when it came to visual design, he was very kind of eager to find somebody he could work well with and kind of bounce ideas off of, have them add their touch and come back with something he liked. So it did feel very collaborative, definitely.
So Monica, I want to ask you a question. As a maker and purveyor of culture yourself and working with the HONEY Collective, how did idea encouragement with Prince work? How did he foster ideas with you? How encouraging was he?
First of all, hi everybody. Thank you for having me here. Well, Prince encouraged us. He always challenged us. When I say us, it was myself and 3 other girls. DJ Rashida was a very close, well, she is a very close friend of mine, and she was Prince's DJ for about a decade. And we were just 4 girls here in Los Angeles that were in dance music primarily. And one of the things that really pushed the HONEY Collective forward, because I never thought that I would even be throwing parties. I mean, I'm a musician, I write songs, and I'm a singer. I never thought I would even throw parties ever. But one of the things that he said to us one night at a dinner was, create the world that you want to live in. And Prince was just all about frequency and just positivity and love. And, you know, and during this time, music was changing. And you could sense that the young artists that were coming through, a lot of them weren't really connected to the greats or really, you know, had a real love for the music and musicianship. So by us creating the world that we wanted to live in, it was creating a space where we could introduce, you know, like George Clinton or the SOS Band, you know, or Rufus and Shaka Khan, along with some of the hip-hop greats. And so that was something, I mean, he completely changed my life in that one moment, you know, seriously. And we set out and we created one of the best parties, introducing, you know, a young generation to fabulous places, rooftops and great music, and we opened doors for female DJs. And so he really just challenged us to think a little deeper. Yeah.
And on the point of working with female DJs, it seemed that Prince was very kind of gender or race or who you were, male or female. It was basically very much about the talent, and this was very much kind of an outlier in the industry, as it is still today.
Yes.
Can you talk about a little bit how he kind of supported female DJs?
Well, he was just about equality, you know, my experience with him, you know, and what I got from him and how I was inspired by him. It was one love, you know, and God and love and just equality. And he had great reverence for, like you said, just musicianship. People who really loved what they did, who took the time to put the love into their craft and creating and evoking emotion and, you know, creating spaces that made people think and feel and be free. And so that was my experience for the most part with him, and something that was always very consistent in our conversations and the way that he would challenge us in our thinking, you know. So it was quite natural for us to make sure that we created a space where people could see female DJs, you know, and in the world that we lived in with Prince, you know, I would see female musicians, and you know, I would see, it was just about equality, you know. I think that's why I can answer that question.
Well, one of the marks of a great artist and a great creative director is someone who pushes the ones that he works with to boundaries that they're not necessarily comfortable in. Can you guys talk a little bit about Prince pushing you to areas creatively that you weren't comfortable working in, or past your comfort zone, I should say?
Yeah, well, I will say that Prince was very open to giving people a chance, giving people a shot. So even if you've never done something before, he's like, well, why don't you try it? You don't know. Maybe you're great at it. And so, for instance, when I was working for him and kind of taking over more of the creative things, the person who's doing his photography had moved on. And so he's like, well, can you do it? And I was not a professional photographer. I didn't know how, and cameras weren't as snap and shoot as they are today. So I said, no, but I'll give it a shot. And he set up the lights, and he got an outfit, and we did a photo shoot. And fortunately for Afshin Shahidi, it didn't work out because he got the gig. But still, he gave me that opportunity, which was really great. And so, you know, there were a lot of firsts with him. So first album I ever worked on, first, you know, large web business, etc. A lot of firsts because he was willing to give you a shot.
And on the topic of first, you and Prince basically established this website, this portal, this safe space, and it became a community for fans. It became a place for people to share information. And in a lot of ways, very back in the early days, it was kind of an ideal form of the internet. And did you guys realize that you were creating something that we all wish the internet could be now today? Or was it?
Well, yeah, we started the NPG Music Club in 2001, and so we did a few websites leading up to that. And there was just a lot of discussion about, you know, at that time it was a very new medium commercially, so how, you know, he was very excited about this idea of I can connect directly to my fans. I don't need middlemen. Obviously, middlemen were a big issue for him with the Warner Brothers years and all that. So the clearer the channel between him and his fans, the better. And he saw the internet as this amazing thing, like you're just sitting at your computer and I can just send you a song. That's fantastic. So, you know, we were trying to figure out how we could turn this into a business, how we could bring in fans to really, you know, build that relationship. And I think that's what the NPG Music Club was. We were offering music, but we were also offering a community, a space that, you know, predates social media. It predates the iTunes music store. So we were really creating something that was pretty unique at the time, for sure. And I think for him, on the one hand, you know, he did see this as groundbreaking, but on the other hand, he just thought this is the way it should be. You know, this is what should be normal for everybody, not just me, but every artist should take advantage of this.
But now there would be like months and months of whiteboards and flow charts and kind of UI, UX design. It just kind of, I don't imagine it was like that.
No. It was a very sort of quick thing. Like, you know, we're just moving through things, and he had his ideas, and I'd show him what we could do. And another, you know, kind of a restriction at the time was we were still in the dial-up era. So Prince had these kind of ideas of, you know, really making it a virtual fantasy space, and you could walk around and stuff that is certainly more possible now. But at the time, there's no way that was going to happen. Also, we had an international audience too, so while someone might have a fast dial-up in California, had to appeal to fans who were in Poland or, you know, other places that didn't have quite the same thing. So that was an issue too. But yeah, he definitely dreamed big.
Well, to that point of dreaming big and then managing expectations, Mitch, you designed a lot of physical props, stage sets, designs, things like that. In that area of design, things don't always go the way you hope or plan when you actually get into actually fabricating and making and realizing the design. How did that work when things didn't go as planned, and how did you kind of manage that dialogue with Prince?
That happened a lot. And actually, because I think there was always a lot of complexity to it. There was a lot of detail to everything that he did. So if you're working on a music video, or you're working on props, or you're working on a stage piece, there was always, to Sam's point, it was always a first. You know, it was just nobody had done it that way, or he didn't want to do it the way that he had seen somewhere else or had an example of it. Like, it would always be something that's new that we would just have to figure out, like, who are we going to find that's going to fabricate it. And I think to Sam's other point about, like, being able to get the opportunity to do a lot of different things. Like, we had, for the most part, we were people doing graphics and music videos. We didn't have any familiarity with, like, building props or doing stage design. And, you know, you're doing a music video and he's asking you, so I have, you know, an event in Japan, we have to get this stuff up on stage, like, how are you going to incorporate that? We're like, I don't know, but we'll have that figured out, and we're on the phone like 2 minutes later trying to figure out, like, who we can partner with and who we can figure this out with, because we didn't know how to do it at the time, but we knew we could be super resourceful and find somebody that could help us. But he would give you that trust. Like, he would give you the opportunity, if you were doing a lot of other things well and collaborating with him and being, you know, like, oversharing as much as possible, he trusted you to try a lot of different things. And, you know, we had no right to do a lot of the stuff that we were doing, and I think that's why in a lot of cases it went wrong too, because we didn't know exactly how to do it. But I think, you know, in looking back now, you know, years later, it's one of my strengths, is being able to fabricate pretty much anything and figure that out for whatever purpose. But it's because we had to figure it out so quickly, and he was always thinking about something like, I don't know how you make a mic that looks like a gun, like, you know, and to actually have it, you know, work and have him be able to, you know, articulate it. And so I think just simple things like that, which today would be like, oh, just prototype that, do it on a 3D printer, we're set to go. There's just so much to figure out, and I think that was part of the challenge. Like, he just always pushed us to do things that were, you know, really unique, and at least at our time, a lot of it was gold. There was a lot of gold. But I think the interesting thing, as far as the failures in it, I think as a designer, and I'm a print designer, classically trained that way, that it was always, everything was being about perfection and get everything all dialed in, and all of his world is iteration, like, fast. Just keep iterating, keep refining, keep developing stuff, and that's a very different way of thinking, and it moves very, I'm sure you guys can relate to it, just moves very, very quickly, and you're just super precious coming out of school, and everything looks, you know, you want it perfect, and all of a sudden you're in this environment where you're working really crazy hours and really trying to make things amazing, but also making 100 amazing things, not making 2 amazing things. So that's been a big change, I think, in seeing how designers work now. Is like, yeah, that's great, but where's the other 100? I can take a look at. You know?
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting point, and musically and visually, definitely musically, it's known that he played every instrument in the studio himself, but visually, like it was said that Michelangelo, when we started to make a sculpture, he could kind of see inside the stone what he had to kind of eliminate to make the sculpture come out of the stone. Did Prince see it already from the start, or was it through this kind of iteration? And it sounds like he also gave you guys a lot of freedom. Where on the line of the spectrum was the freedom versus his vision?
Well, I think you know, the Michelangelo point you're making probably applied a little bit more to his music. I definitely got the sense that he would go into the studio and he just had to get this song out, and he had it already dialed into his head. He knew the drum part, he knew the bass part, he knew the guitar part, which I think is why he works so often alone, because he just had this idea and he just wanted to do it. He wanted to wait for people to come into the studio. But as far as like the visual component goes, I think he was a little, like I said, a little more collaborative, a little more like, let's see what you can add into it. You know, for example, I worked on an album called Xenophobia, which was a all-instrumental jazz record. And so visually, he was like, just make it look like jazz. And I had a bunch of photos from Afshin Shahidi, and so I thought, okay, well, I tried out some things, and I tried out some really creative things that I thought, and he liked them. And so we wound up using them, and he turned them into backdrops for the stage and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, that was an example of him kind of taking a step back and saying, well, what do you think? And saying, okay, I like the result.
Well, it definitely seemed like his visual voice came out from no place we've ever seen before. It was definitely unique. It was definitely his own, and that's why it's so strong and memorable. But at the same time, you could definitely see strong threads of influences, references in his visual voice. What do you know about the way he kind of explored references, or did he study books, or have kind of sources that were sources of inspiration for him that made it into your conversations and into your work?
I think I would have less of that in my experience with him, which was about a year and a half. But what it did teach us is like really what visual research is. Like he was really into mythology at that point in time, and so we were researching a lot of mythology and space, and a lot of things that you will see like in the Love Symbol album, or where we would actually incorporate a lot of that visually. But it was, I think, the great thing is he kept pushing you to do that. So we were just doing, hours and hours of research before we even were putting something in front of him. And I think that was just, that was very new to us. But I think as far as his inspirations, most of the creative directors that we would work with would usually come in with just like a whole bunch of photographs and just like lay it out on the table and say, he liked this, and he liked this, and he liked this. And we're like, okay. And then we just start on that track and find something. But I think we didn't see as much from him directly as far as what his influences were, but it definitely pushed us to do a lot of research. So.
Yeah, I think going back to the visual aspects of it, obviously his musical influences are pretty clear and well known, but visually, he was somebody who really loved going to movies, for example. Like he was always going to the movies. There was a theater down the street from Paisley Park. They would rent out often. And so he was always kind of abreast of what the new movies were. And so, movies that would come out like The Matrix, for instance, which he thought was really interesting, this whole idea of a virtual reality that we're all existing in. He really liked that, so he wanted to like incorporate some of those ideas in what we were doing, because we were doing online stuff, so that's kind of in the same ballpark, maybe. So yeah, I would hear a lot of things about movies. I would hear about like old Hollywood photographs, like Hurrell, like these really kind of very noir black and white photos. He loved those. He would reference those a lot. So he kind of was out there with his eye looking for things to kind of bring back, for sure.
And I understand that fashion was a big part of the HONEY Collective too. And
oh, well, yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. In the beginning of us talking about the HONEY Collective, I mean, he pretty much had it all mapped out. Like, Monica, you should wear, or Shelley, you should wear, like really being fanciful, like really just creating just a fun space. But just to add what these gentlemen were talking about in terms of, there was not a big window of time to really dive into and to really think about all these things. Like, he really was like encouraging or challenging you to step into the realm of possibility. And, which is a fanciful world, and all the magic lives there, really, because like you said, you create something and you didn't even really realize, like maybe had you taken time to really, really think about it, you might just talk yourself out of it or overthink it. But when you step into that realm of possibility of the nowness of something, just what you create, and you step back and go, wow, look at this. And that's truly where the magic is. And I keep reiterating this because I really got this from him. This is something that lives with me, and it shifted my perception and my perspective just in how I move in the world now and what I do in my life. I just try not to overthink things and creating things. If it's a thought and it feels good, I just step into it. So I think everything around Prince, and I can't speak for him, I can only just say what I feel, obviously, but I feel like everything around him was inspiration. He loved to laugh. We watched tons of movies. Music. He loved putting people in peculiar situations. I really think that he got a kick out of that kind of stuff, to tell you the truth. But I think he was inspired by everything, just good vibes, everything around him.
Amazing. Just to put you in the challenge and to ask yourself to create right there. and just through iteration.
Well, and actually, that's a really good point, because I think that's the thing. Something you did, at 2:30 in the morning, 3 weeks into something that you did in 10 minutes was like the best idea, and you're just like, well, we've been working all this time, and look at all this other stuff we have. It's amazing. But again, it's because you weren't getting precious about it. You were really, it was pushing you to kind of keep exploring stuff, and I think you would have to find ways to get really not just creative, but also really practical about what you're doing. Like in the time that we were doing stuff, it wasn't you were writing stuff on paper, you were actually shooting things in the studio, you were bringing them back into computer systems, because we weren't dealing with Macintoshes, and we weren't doing anything that was actually quick. So you had to figure out ways of like, how can we be quick and nimble and find really interesting combinations of things. So the organic nature of what he pushed us into was just very different. So when you talk about that, yeah, the fanciful world, it does feel like you're working with Willy Wonka for a period of time. It's pretty cool.
Well, I do want to ask you about the creation of the left symbol, but you hit on the hours and the late hours. Prince famously worked untraditional hours, and if you didn't keep those hours, how I know for myself, I like to create at a certain time of day, and when I'm fresh and ready and sharp, and that might not be at 3 in the morning. So how do you manage that? And you're kind of like on call, like a physician.
Oh yeah, you're definitely on call. I mean, especially with the online world where everything is so immediate, and things can be changed immediately, and he really liked that. Like, he'd see something and like, oh, change that, and he'd call me up, and I'd have to change it. But I would say that what really drove that on him, the kind of unconventional hours, was I got the sense from him that he was someone who put his creativity first, like above everything. Like, it's 3 in the morning, it doesn't matter. I need to do this. This is something that's important to me right now, and it could be Sunday at 10 a.m. or it could be Tuesday at 3 in the morning. It doesn't matter. Like, the creativity comes first. That's what my sense.
But as artists yourself, how do you summon the energy, the force, the creative sharpness at that hour?
Well, I think
it's like a fireman.
No, and I think it's the interesting thing, and Sam and I were out one night talking about this. Is just that I just think he worked on a different timeline. Like the timeline of what we all work with on a normal day is not the way his brain worked, and that was fantastic. And I'm a vampire anyway, so it didn't matter. And I think most people I worked with were too. Like, they didn't. I had 3 other partners, and they had a really hard time dealing with the hours. They were just like, oh, he wants to come back again, and it's like, it's 1 a.m. I don't know how long I'm going to be like, stay at it. And, there's a few of us that were just like, we'll stay here as long as we need to, whatever day we need to, because this could end tomorrow. And we had that conversation with Satara Cheddar, who got us plugged in originally. It was amazing because she gave us that opportunity, and also just kept reminding us, is like, I love coming back here, I love working with you guys, and I think he does too, but that could change tomorrow, that could change for me, that could change for you. And so I think you were just putting your all into it all the time. So I think that we became kind of in that same mindset. We were putting creative first, but also not worrying about, is it 3 in the morning or is it 10 o'clock at night. And I think now in my work, I just have a lot of stamina now. It's weird. Like people are just like, oh, I had to work an all-nighters. Like, oh, okay. And then, like, that was a big deal. But you have that creative spirit that could come at 3 in the morning, or it comes, middle of the day. And I actually thank him for that, because for what we do and the way we need to react now, it's even tougher. Like, it's much more demanding, and I think he kind of built that stamina, in us.
Well, I mean, it worked out fine for me. I mean, to this day, I probably don't go to bed until 3 or 4 in the morning. So we had the most fun, I will say that. And at any given moment, we would probably get that call from Prince or Rashida. Okay, Prince wants to have a party at his house, and it is 11 o'clock, and invite your friends. You can invite this many. And I mean, who doesn't want to get a call at 12:30 saying, hey, meet me at Prince's house? So, I think I had some friends that were just like, am I ever going to get that call from Monica? But he had a thing where, I mean, I really just want to share this with you guys, people who really love Prince. Being at his house and some of, you know, those parties, first of all, he was just immaculate, you know, I mean, just from head to toe at all times, okay? At all times. His house smelled beautiful. Like as soon as you walked in, it was just like the scent of gardenias, you know? So just the experience, like as soon as you parked and walked, it was all an experience. It was all creation. It was all there for you to just feel something, you know? But he would even do these concerts. I was blessed to be able to hear him perform Purple Rain full on, like I was in a stadium with just 12 of us. Like he didn't sing it any different than he would have if he was in front of 100,000 people, you know, and there were just 12 of us there. It was the same, you know, feeling. He was present in everything that he did. So, you know, he might even do a costume change. We'd all be there and it'd be like, where did P go? Honey, P would come back down, honey, and he would be dipped, you know, like, did you just go upstairs and change clothes and you're in all white? I am here for it. Oh my God. So, you know, or his sneakers would have lights at the bottom. I would be like, Pete, are your sneakers lighting up? And he would laugh, like, don't you see them lights, you know? So everything was just excellent. You know, everything had love in it. I keep saying love, 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 love. Everything had love in it. And the rule was you could not go home until the sun came up, you know? So I didn't ever have a problem with that, you know, like, and all of a sudden he would just not be there, and we'd go, well, you think it's time to go home? You think it's time to leave? And I would just walk out of the door and I'd go, good night, Prince. I know you're probably up there asleep someplace, but I'm like, do you think he's a vampire? Like, you know, but that was, I just think, you know, when everybody was asleep, it was just this whole other world that just lit up, you know, and there are creatives here, so I'm sure a lot of you understand that space, you know. It was just a magical, you know, that was the midnight hour, you know, and a lot of things, like a lot of creativity and just great music, but yeah, that he was never inconsistent there. Late hours, for sure.
I just want to end one thing because that just totally reminded me of something. I ended up shooting a shot of this the other day just to share because, to your point about creatives knowing what that time's like, the Questlove had done this piece in Rolling Stone, and I just want to read it because I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, but I think after his passing, when I read this, it was just like I just like broke down because it's so much what he kind of left us with. So this is Questlove's voice. I don't know, there's so much we all don't know. This is what I do know. Much of my motivation for waking up at 5 a.m. to work, and sometimes going to bed at 5 a.m. after work, came from him. Whenever it seemed like it was like too steep of a climb, I reminded myself Prince did it, so I had to do it also. It was the only way I could achieve a level of greatness, which of course was impossible, but that's aspirational thinking for you. For the last 20 years, whenever I wake up at 5 in the morning, I knew Prince was up to somewhere, in a sense, sharing a workspace with me. For the last few days, 5 a.m. has felt different. It's just a lonely hour now, a cold time before the sun comes up. I think that kind of says it.
Yeah, a lot of inspiration there. And going back to the presence that Monica was talking about and the intersection of the iterations that you went through and not being precious about it. There's a lot of designers and people who work in branding in this room, and you know, when you walk into a brand meeting, there's briefs and studies and research and thoughts and plans and ideas and many generations. How can you take us through the design of the love symbol that became one of the most iconic logos in 20th century music history?
Wow, that sounds awesome. Well, first of all, and I think as all of us know, it's not and what was great about him is the people we got to collaborate with and the people he introduced us to in the process always brought just amazing experiences. And I think in my case, obviously I wasn't the only one that was involved in the process, and I think his art director Satara and her art director Liz were originally working with him on the idea for it, and I think it started from one of their sketches originally. But for all you mega fans, I guess a lot of that symbol stuff started happening way back on the 1999 album. So you started seeing some of the peace and some of the male and female symbols, and then it started showing up like on his motorcycle in Purple Rain. But the evolutions from that point forward, Satara worked with us in People magazine to document kind of the progression of that. And so it did keep kind of evolving to a point where, like in Get Off, you saw it in the music video there, where it got to be much more serpentine and kind of crazy looking. And then there was some other versions where they started seeing a little bit of that Eye of Horus kind of element to it. So like all of this stuff happened from 82 and 84 all the way up to 92 when we touched it. But I think when we got into it, they had just started, again, since he was in mythology at that point, we were doing a lot of that kind of research for other parts of music videos. Seven was the first one that we worked on. And did everybody like that song? That's still my favorite Prince song ever. It's so good. It's like when Mind tastes dancing in your machine room at work, it's like fantastic. But I think the process from there was really these initial sketches, and then started incorporating all these things that Satara had told us about, and they were influences that you can see in the online. But the basic ones were looking at the backwards 7 that you see in the logo was one of the things that we worked with. The Eye of Horus element that also kind of took on some yin and yang kind of sensibility to it. But then also the 7 was just a super important thing to him, both with his birthday and when he announced that he was going to be that symbol. So there's a lot of those little things that we started putting into it, but it's a very, like the actual process of it, again, we worked over a couple nights to do it, and it just, all of a sudden it was just kind of approved. So we didn't spend months on it, and there was no whiteboards with a lot of stuff on the wall. It was just really quick iteration of what we were doing, and then all of a sudden it sounded like, hey, we need to get this on a stage in Tokyo in like 2 weeks. Like, what are we gonna do? And again, you just go, oh, we'll figure that. Yeah, we'll figure that out, and you just start, again, figuring those, those next steps. But I think the idea of it coming together was rather quick, and I think the influences, I think it's funny because, as we all know, when you look at blogs and everything, there's like stories of so much inspiration to that thing that you can't even imagine, that sound fantastic. But the reality of it, you work so quickly that all that stuff, there's some conceptual thinking and some logic to it, but a lot of it is not that pre-planned, and I think that's what's amazing about it, because sometimes it just doesn't need it. So, hopefully, is that enough to say about
Yeah, I'd like to take that into my next logo brief meeting. Well, when you work with such a creative genius, sometimes there's an element of fear, kind of stepping into the same arena with someone so powerful creatively. Was there an element of fear, or did he kind of level out the playing field when he was talking to you? And what about issues of disappointment?
Well, he had a really big presence. Like, when he was in the room, you really felt it. So as far as like fear, I don't know if I would necessarily characterize it as that, but certainly, especially when you're initially meeting him for the first time, there's that kind of like, whoa, like there's somebody here, there's a presence here, it's a big deal, and your heart might beat a little faster. But I would imagine, like, if you were picking up a bass and sitting next to him, that would be very intimidating. But as a visual designer, he didn't know how to use Photoshop, so like I had that up on him. Yeah. So yeah, like I think it kind of goes back to being that made it very collaborative. It wasn't something he could just do and do better. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily fear, but it was definitely, you know, he definitely raised the bar, I will say that. He had a very high bar, and he would give you your shot, but if you didn't come to that high bar, well, there's the door, so.
Well, how did, I mean, to that point, how did no work, or when you weren't hitting the mark, or what did that sound like? What did that feel like? What was that conversation like?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I've worked with other bosses and artists who were a little more what I would describe as passive aggressive, where they kind of beat around the bush about how they really feel about something and don't quite want to say it's bad. But Prince, you know, he had no fear saying, that sucks, do it over again. And, you know, I'm from Chicago, I can handle it. And it wasn't a problem. And I appreciated that directness, that honesty. Like, I would rather you say, it sucks, do it over again, than like, oh, it's okay, I guess. And just kind of be wishy-washy about it. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that there were bad experiences. There were definitely, like, he was never like rude or impolite. It was always just like, look, we're trying to do something here. So let's get on the same page.
Which is fantastic because I'm from Minnesota, so passive aggressive was awesome. So he was like, I really hope he likes it. You know, it was never like that directness was really tough for people. Like and everybody that worked for us in Minneapolis, it was a really tough thing because it's very passive aggressive, and I think so you learn a lot more that way. And I think, you know, since being in Minneapolis, I've lived in New York, and I was like, oh wow, maybe this is where he learned it. This is fantastic. You know, just very direct and very, you know, to the point. But I think the one thing that I just want to pick up on what Monica said that's really interesting is that I think there was this presence of him, this environment that he created, and just by being in the room, and it wasn't nervousness. It was just like, wow, there's an energy. There's just like, something just came in the room and it just took over the room. And so, like, I just get kind of chills now because it feels the same way as it did then, that I wasn't super nervous, just like, wow, he's here. Like, you know, and it was just, you know, whether he was driving up in his, you know, yellow BMW on Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning and walking out in his yellow outfit, we're like, wow, I better go change. Like, I'm like, what's going on? You know, and he would just come in and he'd have, it was, and again, it's just, he brought this presence to every day that we were working that, and I didn't deal as much with him directly, but, you know, you could just tell, like, literally you could tell when he was in the building. Like, it was one of those things, so it's fantastic.
It just strikes me as interesting is this, he's kind of left a mark on how all of you are creatively, and these are things that designers here in this room tonight can take away with them as well as we move into the future and help build this deeper engagement with music and culture through the comprehensive, the whole holistic element of everything, the look, the feel, the smell, the textures, the fabrics, the photography, the design, the sound, of course. As we wrap up, can you guys talk about your greatest challenge with him? Creative challenge, I guess, or most frustrating moment? Or,
I think, you know, for the most part, it's just accessibility, because he had just, there's so much going on, because to Sam's point, he was just plugged into everything, and I think that's what made him great. He was just, he had his finger and his hand in everything, and that made it, I think it always put the pressure on us, but I think it was really hard to always get that accessibility to knowing like where we were at and what we were doing. But I think, you know, that's just being Prince, you know, right? Like he's got a million things to do, but besides that, man, it was a great ride. I wouldn't change any of it, really.
I would say the most challenging thing kind of goes back to what I was saying about the limitations of the internet at the time. The first things I was doing for him were on the internet. So again, going back to a dial-up universe, if people can remember that, you know, he had these big ideas of a virtual world and a virtual house. People could walk in and we're all like there together in a virtual space. And it's great, but we just couldn't do it at that time. It just wasn't feasible. So trying to, you know, kind of meet him halfway, like, or we'll do something, and we'll get as close as we can. But I would say that was one of the biggest challenges, was the technology just wasn't there. I mean, he was just thinking somewhere else, and we weren't there yet, technically.
Well, let's see, there might be a couple. Well, as you know, Prince didn't like curse words, right? And so, it's kind of hard when you're playing hip-hop music, so we would know, it's like certain things, right? And obviously, much respect always. And one night he came to our party. First of all, he deemed himself our mascot. Can you believe that? I'm like,
That's insane.
I'm like, no way. And he's like, and then it's all in the blogs, and I'm like, this is unbelievable, but let's go with it. But one night, Prince was coming to a party, and I think DJ Q was playing something Biggie Smalls or something, just a lot of cursing. So, it would always be, oh God, what record are you about to play? Like, play the clean version, or, that would sometimes be a bit of a challenge. Or if there was something that, if he didn't like the vibe that we were creating, he would, call us over, girls, to be very calm, and, it's just like, change the frequency. But you know what, that allowed us to really pay attention to what was around, and to raise energy higher, to really just pay attention, to be present. But one personal incident that I had one night with Prince was, I had taken a picture, and we would have these visuals playing on a big screen, and there was a picture that I took that I felt was very artistic, and very tastefully done, in my opinion. And Prince asked me to take it down, and I didn't want to take it down. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And it was just one of those moments, and I kind of got called into, the little section there, but he had a conversation with me, and I think in that moment I had learned so much from him, and I wanted to still be myself, in that moment, and maybe this was a moment that maybe I challenged him a little bit, where I said I didn't want to take it down, and I wanted to really understand why he felt that I should, and it was a nude picture, but nothing showing. If you saw it today, it was very well done. You couldn't see anything. It was just a beautiful photograph, and he, he said to me, basically the mind wanders, and I'm like, I'm a woman, Prince, and, I feel like if I'm in here with blue jeans, the mind is gonna wander, it's just, I think that this is tasteful, and I don't feel that I'm compromising myself in any way, and this is how I feel about it, and then he said, well, and I was like, when you were my age, you were expressing, you were free in your expression, and I had a couple posters ripped off my bedroom wall from my dad, and they were all Prince posters, so, I was like, allow me my journey of expression, not that he wasn't allowing me, he was just challenging me, but, and someone that you admire so much and adore and have reverence for, that was difficult, but that was one moment, and I believe the reason why it was just because where he was in his life at that moment, he'd become Seventh-day Adventist, and God was, religion was a big part of his life, and and he felt there was like a father figure with us in a sense. But I was trying to stand my ground in that moment as just being a creative person expressing, but that was the only one moment that we had ever had, and I think I was the only one in the group that probably was like, and then he was like, girls, what do you think? Nobody said anything. And I was like,
they let you out to dry.
I'm like,
they left you out there at the cold.
This is getting ready to go down. I see what's up. Nobody anything.
They were not. You turned around and they were actually gone.
They were just like.
They were from Minnesota.
Right.
I think they were from Minnesota.
Yeah. So
I mean, that also sounds like leading up to the last question I have, which is what your favorite creative moment with him might be. Can you share, I mean, what your favorite moment was?
I have to honestly say every single moment. I have to honestly say every single moment. Every moment. Every moment was a creative moment. Every moment was just, you knew that you were in the presence of greatness and just a dynamic human being that came on this planet to do, like, his music, his art. Will we ever see that again? You know, I hope so, you know, I hope so, but you just knew that you were in the presence of just something, I have no word for it. So every moment I absorbed, and every moment was beautiful, except that one little moment. But no, that was even amazing. I've got a great story out of that, you know. But every moment, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There were a lot of really great moments, a lot of really fun projects I got to work on. But one story that I do like to tell that I do really remember a lot was one time we were at his house in LA and we were working. A lot of times the way we would work is I would be on the computer and he'd kind of sit behind me or next to me and kind of direct and say, you know, do that, do this, or we were going through photos or something like that. Could take all afternoon. And a lot of times what I would do is I would put together like playlists on my iPod and play music for him. And, you know, I kind of had an idea of what he liked and he would kind of make comments here and there. But one day we got into this discussion about music, and he was talking about like early Chicago music and Steely Dan and musicians like that, you know, kind of the not so obvious influences on him. And he started getting real excited, and he said, well, why don't you go download those albums? So we did. We downloaded AIGA and Fleetwood Mac Rumors and the first couple of Chicago records, and we just listened to them all the way through, and he was making jokes and saying, oh, listen to this guitar solo here, and you know, it was just a really fun time. This was you really got the sense this was somebody who really just loved music in all its forms, and black, white, it didn't matter. It was just music, and it was joy, and it was fun. So that was a really special afternoon, and it was really fun to work in that environment for sure.
I would agree with both of you as far as it all being, you know, amazing as far as experiences. But two of them kind of like a really early one, and then, you know, fast forward, you know, 30 years later. But I think, is everybody familiar with the movie Brazil? Familiar with that? So, so this was the joke on me one day, is that everybody that, my partners and everybody else knew that I was a Brazil fanatic. And it turns out that one of the first, when we worked on Seven, I didn't know that Norman Garwood was actually the production designer, and he was the production designer on Brazil. So when my partners came in, he goes, hey, yeah, we're going to do this music video, and they knew that I was going to go ballistic. So it was like, and there's this production designer, we're going to show you some of his drawings. And they started bringing out stuff that he had done on Brazil, and started bringing out some of the drawings from Prince. I was like, what? It was like, this is your life, you know? It was like, what is all this stuff? And like, that's who you're going to be working with. And I mean, my head was going to explode. I didn't know what, like that was just, like, where would you ever get the experience of something like that with, you know, 3 guys that started a company, you know, 2 years before that, doing corporate videos, and next thing I'm working on, you know, something like that with somebody like Norman is amazing. And, you know, I was doing, from corporate videos to say, you know, putting stuff like shaking that ass and that kind of stuff on, like that was my night job all of a sudden. It was just, it was very different, but it was amazing. Like, those are just, getting that opportunity just wouldn't happen without somebody like him, you know, at the helm. So that was really amazing, and, you know, it took me about a year to recover from that because I was just so excited. But I think the other thing is, you know, fast forward so many years later, you work on something that at the time seems very, you know, just another thing you're making, another logo you're making in some form. And when like the Super Bowl comes on, and then all of a sudden he's coming out and he's standing on this thing that you made, it's like, that was pretty And then he brings out the guitar, and then it starts raining, and then he starts singing Purple Rain. It's just
he delivers like the most iconic performance.
Yeah, it's
ever.
like, oh yeah, that's what we were working on a few years ago. But again, it just all of a sudden has relevance again, and I think that's what's so amazing about him is that he always had validity in the music he did and in the way he did it, and there was always a great mystery to it, and there was a legacy to it that just very few artists have. And I think it was just such a special experience to see that kind of come to life at that point in time. And I keep, if anybody asks me about like what's the most interesting part about working with him, is I just always think of the ability he gave me to always remember that no matter what you're working on, put your best into it, because you never know what the result's going to be. And if I did that logo at that point in time with Liz and Cetera, I never would have thought it was going to come up on the Super Bowl to like one of his best performances. So you put that effort into everything. So.
There's just been so many incredible creative take-homes that we can take away from this conversation tonight, and as we as designers move on into our day-to-day work tomorrow and the next week and the next month and year, these are all lessons that I hope can continue to inspire us, even though he's not here. And for that, I really sincerely want to thank you, Monica and Sam and Mitch. Thank you so much. And we are going to open it up for questions. But also, in thanks, Mitch brought this, the love symbol, blind embossed, printed with a hit of purple by the wonderful Aardvark Letterpress. And we have a quantity of these for you guys here tonight. And it's really quite stunning. So true thanks to you, Mitch, on that. So I just wanted to, just getting a window into this experience, into this creativity and your creativity, and sharing what it was like exchanging this creativity with Prince. Thank you very much for sharing this with us tonight. I think we have some time for questions. I can't really see out there, but
I have a question for Monica. So, did you up here? Did you take the picture down?
Oh, David Mays. Yeah. Oh, David,
did you take the picture down?
Eventually, but it didn't come quick. No, you want to know really what happened? He left. Yeah, he got up. He was like, I'm out of here. The whole back and forth thing, yeah. I did take it down, but I didn't take it off of like my social media or anything, like that. And then we just never spoke about it again.
No. Thank you.
Yes.
So Monica, your story kind of touched on this a little bit, but Prince was kind of famously religious. So I was wondering if you guys have any other stories about how that was kind of reflected in his work.
Yeah. Well, for Prince fans, Prince always spoke of God and love, and God gave love, like, even in his wild days, I mean, the Lord's Prayer was in controversy, or the cross, or he always spoke about love and God, and oneness. There was always a message, whether it was in your face or if it was hidden somewhere, oh goodness, I'm sorry, can you guys hear me? I'm sorry about that. I just got really comfortable with you guys. He always spoke of love and God, always, but around us, God was definitely, religion was a conversation that we had often, and it was really important to him to know that we knew God. That was very, 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 very important, that, and just that we knew God, and that we knew that God was love. So religion, I think, was something that, I think as he grew up and got older, things started changing. But even in his wildest days, God was always there in his music and his message. Yeah.
Well, you know, I was there at an interesting time as far as his religious beliefs go, because when I was involved with him from 98 to 2007, he was discovering Jehovah's Witnesses because of Larry Graham, and so that really sparked something in him, and he really responded to that. So he was, you know, I was around when he was kind of becoming a Jehovah's Witness. And so what that meant for me was that there was a lot of Bible study, a lot of going to Kingdom Hall, a lot of very heady discussions about the Bible and God and all these things. And, you know, it had taken a little different turn from his earlier music, because his earlier music had been a little bit more ambiguous, a little bit more like God is love, love is God. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, was a very spelled out belief, they had definite ideas. And so, you know, it was really interesting to talk with him about it, but I think as far as the fans were concerned, it was a little kind of confusing. And one of the events that we did in 2002 or 2001, he had a celebration at Paisley Park where he was releasing this record called The Rainbow Children, which was a very heavy religious record for him at the time. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to give his fans a first listen to it, and then he wanted to have a discussion group afterwards. So we invited people in there, kind of in small groups, and we played the record for them. And afterwards, we tried to lead a discussion about what people thought. And there was a lot of controversy, a lot of back and forth. But Prince would even join in on some of these discussions. And I think for him, he just really enjoyed that people were even just talking about it. You know, he just really kind of got off on like that debate, and like, you know, we're talking about these big ideas, and he just loved that it was happening in Paisley Park. And so, you know, religion was really important to him, and the Jehovah's Witness thing when I was there was really important to him. So, yeah, you definitely felt that when I was there.
Yes.
You guys started off the conversation speaking about how like people engage with music nowadays and how that's changed over the past couple of years and whatnot. And I think that has to do a lot with like digital services and whatnot. So how did Prince feel about, you know, music being accessible digitally as opposed to like being able to buy something physical as a CD or an LP or, you know?
Well, in those initial days when we were making downloads available digitally, you know, like I said before, it predates the iTunes Music Store. So this was kind of the first time an artist took his music, put it online, and said, "Here, I'm going to sell it directly to you." So I think he definitely appreciated analog. He recorded on analog for years. But he really liked the quick accessibility. Like I could record a song on Tuesday and people could be listening to it on Wednesday. He loved that because that's kind of the rate he was making music. So the quicker the channel, the better. And you know, we still produce plenty of physical objects that people could have and if they wanted that option. But having that quickness with the downloads, you know, that really appealed to him a lot.
But I would just add to that, and this is really Sam's area, but you know what Sam and Prince created was this comprehensive world and this complete design experience, this engagement with the fan. And even though it was digital, it was still this depth of engagement. So it wasn't kind of like, you know, Spotify or another streaming service where it's on to the next song. It was just because it's digital doesn't mean it's bad. There was still great forethought and intention and creativity there.
And I think too, we tried to make sure that we connected with fans that like by buying this download, you're not supporting a big corporation, you're not supporting Spotify or Apple Music. You're supporting Prince directly. So if you buy a song from us digitally, anything, like you're supporting him directly, and that's the relationship that he wanted.
So first off, I want to thank all of you guys for such an amazing job of giving us insight into Prince's life. And I feel like he's here in spirit tonight, so thank you all. Amen. But I want to ask you, it sounds like he had you all working like crazy hours, and there were times where I worked for a startup company and I had to do like 12, 16-hour days. I know what kept me up, but what kept you all up then, and then what keeps you guys up now when you have an idea? Like, how has that changed from when you worked with him to now when you work on your own projects nowadays?
Well, I just stay up. That's just my life, pretty much. You know, that's just part of just what it is for me. I'm up till 3 or 4 in the morning, and you know, that's when I'm kind of exploring. I'm thinking, I'm writing things down. You know, that's where all my best stuff comes from. when I'm up during the day, excuse me, I feel like I'm working, you know, but when the sun sets, and everything is quiet and I feel like most people are asleep, that's just kind of where I just feel like all that creativity is just floating around, yeah.
And I would say too that, you know, kind of what kept you up, let's say, is, you know, he kind of enrolled you in this idea of like, we're trying to do something really cool here. We're trying to choose something that's really great. Like, don't you want to be a part of this? And so, you know, it was always really focused on that end goal. We're here to create something. Like, don't you want to do that? And, you know, going back to like having your shot, it's like people would come along and they'd be like, oh, I kind of do 9 to 5, then I go home and whatever. And those people didn't really last very long because he wanted someone that was kind of on the same wavelength with him. Like, you know, we're all here to achieve something cool, big. So yeah, that was, he got you excited.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody reads Dave Eggers at all, but he kind of writes about that still of the night and what that time is like, and I think it's something that I think all of us can relate to, but I think it's just, it's a different, your mind's in a different place at that point in time, and I think the Questlove thing just nailed it. There was a lot of times, like I really thought that was just kind of in my head as like, oh, you know, we got so used to knowing that Prince was probably up and he was also either looking at her stuff or expecting something, so we just always kind of kept churning, but it never felt like work. It really, I mean, as much as it felt like we were doing long hours, like I think when people say long hours, all of a sudden it sounds like a negative, and it's really just, it's just an energy that you just keep working through that, and I think you just find that over the years now, that's a really special time and place, and I think Sam was telling me about that whole timeline thing of how Prince didn't really have that timeline in his head of a normal day. I think that's how my brain works now, is it just, you don't kind of shut it off, I guess. I do sleep, but.
Yes.
When someone like Prince has such a huge fan base, is it more that he feels responsibility to them, taking them along into his way of thinking about life, or is it entertainment?
I guess if you boil it down to just entertainment, I know it sounds a little like dismissive.
Well, I just meant, how did he look at it? You know, like, oh, they're really gonna love this symbol, you know, but did he want it to mean something deeper?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, he always was thinking, you know, every project he put so much into it. I mean, I think he definitely wanted that response from his audience. So, you know, music was his life, and it wasn't just a matter of like, I'm going to put a record out and then I'm going to disappear in my mansion for 4 years. Like he was always working because he always wanted to have that expression and get it out to people. I mean, that was a big part of it. It wasn't good enough just to sit with him. Like he wanted to get it out to people as fast as possible, whether it was a live show or whether it was CDs or downloads or whatever. But yeah, it was, you know, that was the priority for him, to get that music to his audience.
Yeah, and I think just to the symbol part of it is, I think there was always, in talking to Satiric, and she brought up the idea of just the unification of what the symbol represents, and the acceptance, not being discriminating, like all of that stuff was part of his conversation. And I think when you think about what that symbol means now, you know, hopefully there was somebody that mentioned online about how that could eventually be something more like, you know, the peace symbol and what that means in our culture. And I think, you know, that love symbol has, I think, a lot of meaning to it. It's just meaning that he brought to it at a really early form, and we're just starting to see now.
Yes.
I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit more about your creative background and how your journey came to Prince, or in the HONEY Collective space, how Prince's journey came to you.
Well,
I've been in music professionally for most of my life. Prince was, I fell in love with music when I was, as a little girl, listening to Prince. That's when I fell in love with music. Music played in my house. My father was blues and souls man, anything from Stax. He just had a beautiful collection, album collection. But I just remember when I the very first song I ever heard was a record called Still Waiting. And I was just a little girl, and it was just the harmonies, it was just the sound of his voice. I don't know, I just remember falling in love. And from that moment was just, you know, like just anything that came out of Minneapolis, okay? It was just like, I'm here for it all. Wendy and Lisa, I love you, you're my sisters. You know, like Brothers Johnson, oh my God, Maserati from Family Stand. You know, I was just a big Prince fan. So how I ended up meeting him, I said I met him through DJ Rashida, who is a great friend of mine, and she became his DJ. So she made the introduction, and it was myself, Shelly Otto, who was in the world of dance, and then another female DJ, and there were 4 of us. And he just liked us, and he had our first meeting. We were at, I think that was the Beverly Hills Hotel in a bungalow, and we were eating amazing food. And, you know, and he was, again, encouraging us, like, do you like the food that you're eating? And, you know, but you can eat, like, the whole point was, you can eat like this every day. And one of the things that he said was, again, creating the world that you want to live in. And he said, I have always been Prince. This was not an idea. You know, this was not something I set out to do. In my mind, this is who I am. I mean, when you really get into that, it really kind of, for me, just how powerful the mind is in creating, like in manifesting things in your own life. You know, just believing, you know, and visualizing and believing when I step in a room, I am exactly who I feel in my mind and know that I am, you know. So that's how I met Prince, and music has always been in my life. So that's I guess my story.
Yeah, and it's proven that he was signed when he was 18 years old. No one said, here's your diploma, you are now Prince. You know, you just would say.
He's like, this is who I was. I've always been in my mind, you know. I mean, it's funny, I have pictures that he has sent me, well, that, you know, when he was younger, and he's like, send this to Monica, she'll get a kick out of it, and he'll go, I was broke here, you know, but he was Prince, you know. He was just always just who he was. This was not a becoming. It was, I guess, it was just a manifesting, just, you know. But it's those little jewels, like sometimes he may not didn't always break things down completely, but would put something out there, you know. And for me, I can only speak for me. I would really absorb that and really think about that, you know. But yeah, so that's my background, a musician. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was studying at the Art Institute of Chicago, painting, and then this thing called the internet and desktop publishing started becoming a thing, and I was in college, and it was kind of the perfect place to get started then, because there were people who were interested in using the computer as a design tool, as an art tool, as a creation tool, and you know, really getting my skills in that environment was really great. And then once I left school, I went directly into doing web design, and these were like the really early stages of it. So I think the combination of that and also being a really huge Prince fan, you know, I really got involved in connecting with fans online. Started throwing parties in Chicago to kind of bring people together. And the fan community online was, you know, was a small thing, and everyone kind of knew each other. And so I knew the people that were working on his websites before me, and they wanted to get some people involved in doing a charity website for him. So I did that, and then, you know, I had these skills, and he kind of recognized that, and he pulled me aside and he said, well, I had this idea about selling music, so let's explore that and see what happens there. So really, I think it was just the combination of like being an early, you know, person doing web design and just kind of connecting with that community online right away is really what brought us together to collaborate on that.
I'll try to make mine short. I was with two other partners originally in a post-production company, so we did music video work and design work. And we were just really close to Paisley Park. We were, maybe 5 or 6 miles from there. And one of the producers, Satara, just decided to come and see our place one day. And we had a really great meeting, and she said, I'll give you a call later in the week. We didn't hear anything, and the experience I was telling you about where the yellow BMW showed up is we just got a call saying, hey, he's going to come on Sunday. Can you be at the facility? And I was like, yeah, of course we can do that. Like, I'll leave Saturday and I'll just stay there until he shows up on Sunday. That sounds fantastic. And so yeah, he just came, and two really big guys in a Suburban came and checked out our place first, and then they left, and then all of a sudden we have this big picture window in the front of our building, and we just see this yellow BMW pull up, and we're like, oh my God, he's here. He's really here. And again, it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and then he walks out in the full performance outfit, and we're like, oh my God, it's just getting better, And then he came to the facility that day, and we started working on 7 at that point, and from literally that first introduction to doing some of the music video work, it was amazing, because it just kept adding to, like, the symbol was just a fluke, that was just part of our process of working on something new. And one of the other things that happened all at the same time is there wasn't a person called Carmen Electra, but we kind of named Carmen, and that name, and actually did her mark and worked on some of her album initially. But there's all these kind of things that just kept happening as part of this process. It was just a whirlwind of amazing stuff, and it all started with him driving up that day, and it was just like, you can't put that away ever. It's actually that color. It's pretty much that color. But
well, speaking of being here, I'm so glad all of you are here tonight. So thank you to you guys for all coming here tonight, and thank you to Apogee, of course, and to the AIGA, and thank you, Monica and Sam and Mitch, for sharing these stories tonight. It's just really inspiring to get. There's a lot to take home and carry on as we all keep working to be as creative as we can. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. No, don't walk away. Come on. Wasn't that amazing? I'm not a designer. I'm not a musician. But Matteo, when you were asking the question about how to keep on going, I wanted to raise my hand. It's on this album. It says, Cold Coffee and Cocaine. It's 1983. A phenomenal album, and we have a nice raffle for you guys. So, 3 of these. Look at this. You want to pull it up? Number 1, here we go. And the number and the winner is 0274225.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Was that your number or not? You're still excited? No one here with this number? How come? Okay, here we go again. This is Judy, by the way. All right. 0274177.
That's me.
Whoa! There you go, man.
Wow.
I hope you got a record player.
I have a podcast and I just play records.
Woo, woo, woo! Check him out.
Give a shout out to AIGA.
That's cool. All right, next one. 02742. Who's still on? Who's still on with this one now? 5. Oh, here we go. All the way from the VIP area. That's awesome. my Dutch fellow man. Keep it in the family. This is quite something different than DJ Chesto, right? Okay, the last one is 027417. Who's in? Still. Oh, come on. You can spin some records. All right. Cool. Again, thank you guys for coming. I thought it was an amazing evening. Lawrence, thank you so much for hosting all this, and Monica, thank you for coming and giving all those great, like stories behind the scene. Sam, thank you. Mitch, thank you so much. Thank you, Apogee. Thank you, all of our sponsors. Thank you, all volunteers of AIGA. And last but not least, Amanda, DJ Amara is going to spin some more Prince music. Thank you so much, all. Thank you and have a good night.